Morning, Minister.
Morning. Who's there?
We've got 3 journalists this side.
Okay. Who's chairing for us? Luffy.
Lutfi.
Okay. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much for coming. Apologies for delaying. We're running late. I'll be chairing the press briefing today, led by Minister. Let me introduce myself in case there's anyone who doesn't know me. Minister Mamoloko Kubai-Ngubane, Minister of Communications, will be chairing this briefing. I'm joined with me by Prof. Mkhize, who's the Minister for Higher Education and Training, together with Minister Bongo, Minister of State Security. Other ministers, unfortunately, couldn't join us, who are members of the IMC that was responsible for dealing with the higher education matters. We've got the CEO of NSFAS with us, joining us. We've got the DDG in Department of Higher Education and Training, who is also acting DG, Parker, who is with us. I'm going to allow the minister. Afterwards, we will take questions from colleagues who are going to ask, and then we'll respond to that. Without wasting time, I should have started by saying compliments of the new season. We haven't seen each other this year. We last saw each other last year. Prof. Mkhize, over to you for the press briefing.
Thank you very much, Minister. The sound.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much, Minister. I would like to greet all of you and say compliments of the new season, and also acknowledge my colleagues, the Minister of State Security on my right, and of course all government officials in our midst, members of the media. Thank you very much for coming through. I must thank Minister of Communication, Minister Kubai-Ngubane, who really assisted us to say, look, as government, besides what the Department of Education, of Higher Education and Training, it's important for us to make a follow-up of the important announcement which was made by the President and elaborate on it. Firstly, I would like to congratulate all our matriculates. We've seen with the IEB, we had really the shining stars. And I was saying, I don't know whether I was talking to somebody on social media, that it gives us a sense of comfort to know that we have a bright future from a knowledge economy point of view if we have young people who complete their matric with a couple of distinctions. I always say many of us won't gain entry in any universities because we didn't have 9 distinctions, 10 distinctions, 8 distinctions, and that's what this kid has done. So we congratulate all of them. But of course, we encourage all our young people who wrote to matric to really say, again, they are so fortunate because they are doing it at a time when in 2009, government separated basic education, the two basic education, and introduced the Department of Higher Education and Training with a post-school education and training system, which means there are more opportunities beyond just thinking about what was there in the past, that you finish matric, then you have to go to the university. So even those who have not done well, it's important to encourage them to know that within a post-school education and training system, we have TVET colleges, which are really an entry to amazing, amazing skills and other opportunities. So we congratulate all of them and really say we'll be there for them. Today marks approximately 20 days since President Zuma made his historic announcements for free higher education and training for poor and working class families. If our dates are correct, this was done on the 16th of December, an important day, Reconciliation Day, 2017. The announcement by the President followed a period that was characterized by debates on what was to be done with the rising costs of higher education in South Africa. Maybe the cost of education in general worldwide, because it's not only even a South African phenomenon, it's a phenomenon, a reality that is affecting many countries. This followed the hashtag Fees Must Fall campaign of 2015, which was the initiative of organize and mobilize students, and it spread across the whole system. I wouldn't even know how it started exactly, but all what I remember is that it was carried by as many students as possible. The policy decision communicated by the President to address funding challenges in higher education is proof that education remains an apex priority of government's pro-poor policies. I think many of you will remember one of the important announcements that were made by President Zuma as far back as 2009. Really, a lot was said around education. It brought us closer to what is in the Freedom Charter and in our Constitution as well. This is a central pillar in the fight to rid the country of the enduring and debilitating socio-economic legacy of apartheid colonialism and its resultant triple challenge of the discrimination based on race, gender, and class-based poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Well, in the context of what the President said, it reminded all of us of what our first democratic president, Utata Nelson Mandela, said about the importance of education. I mean, we often make reference to this without reflecting deeply as to what are implications. President Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. He went on to say, it is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine or the owner, that a child of farm workers, laborers can become the president of a great nation. It is what we make out of what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another, that distinguishes us as leaders or whatever. And, you know, when you look at this quotation, I must say we're a living testimony of what Mandela said. The majority of us sitting in strategic position, be it in government or in the private sector, and I suppose I have friends even in the media, people will always share their stories of coming from nowhere. And so we are a living testimony that good quality education and skills, they uplift you. And not only you, of course, they uplift your family, they uplift your village, your community, and at the end, they make the nation proud of having produced somebody. The weak economy, falling tax revenue growth, and rising debt have put significant pressure on the public finances. These pressures have limited the space for any new policy commitments. Changes to the post-school education and training system will be undertaken in a fiscally sustainable manner. In practice, this means rolling out reforms at a measured pace and reprioritizing funding within existing budgets. This policy decision, which will be phased in over a 5-year period, entails extending and strengthening government support for poor students to enter public universities and technical and vocational education and training TVET colleges, to include the children from working class families. It does this by lifting the threshold to qualify for financial assistance to students from South African households with a combined annual income of up to 350,000 per annum. Effectively changing the definition of the poor and working class to include families with household incomes of up to 350,000 per annum is what we refer to as phasing in a new system. Also, we're disrupting the vicious cycle, as we have said, of the legacy of the past, which sustained inequalities, basing it on race, gender, and class. We're also extending the provision of free higher education and training to the children of the bottom 90% of South African households, provided that they meet the academic admission criteria and requirements of the TVET colleges and universities, and that they have applied for and been offered a place to study at the institution, noting that there are a defined number of spaces at each institution determined by the institution's approved enrollment plan. I think, colleagues, it is important to emphasize what I've just said, because we've tried to say it, and I hope I won't have to repeat it again, that the policy was not meant to disrupt the normal functioning and autonomy of our institutions of higher learning, meaning universities and TVET colleges. We will be disrupting the system if we did away with what is typical features of any academic institution, that you have to apply, you have to meet a criteria in terms of what you want to do, from their point of view in terms of the marks that they want you to have, and then of course they have to have available space in that institution. Those are standards all over the world, and our universities are rated like all other universities. Our TVET colleges are like all other TVET colleges worldwide, where people have to follow procedures. So, continuing along the same lines, I have to explain that this entailed providing full bursaries for tuition and study materials to qualifying poor and working class South African students at both public TVET colleges and universities, and subsidizing accommodation and transport kept at specific levels for those who qualify, starting with the first-time entry students in 2018 and phased in over a period of 5 years. We talk about subsidizing accommodation and transportation. We felt it's important to to clarify that, because normally how government works when they offer any form of assistance, they put a ceiling. We wouldn't expect, for instance, a student to insist on going and get accommodation only in a 5-star hotel. Our ceiling might be far below that, but it will be decent and secure enough for anyone to sit and be able to study and access the library. So hence we thought it's important to talk about this subsidy. Providing for NSFAS packages to already allocated to returning existing university students in 2018, provided they meet the academic progression requirements to be converted from loans into full bursaries. So those who are doing second year and many other years, they won't be held back because they are owing, they cannot pay. Those are the ones who are saying we'll make sure that we enable their applications and make sure they register for the following years, and these are converted. I think it's important, those who are familiar with the challenges students were failing, sometimes a person will qualify for NSFAS but wouldn't be registered because the university will say you are still owing. NSFAS has already received in excess of 300,000 applications for first-year students for the 2018 academic year at universities and TVET colleges. Government would like to assure South Africans that all applicants in possession of a firm offer from a university or TVET college will be assessed for funding using the revised criteria. The second point, which is important to emphasize, is that government will like to assure young people and all South Africans that all those in possession of a firm offer from a university or TVET college but who did not apply for NSFAS funding will be identified through our systems. Remember, there are people who might have said, oh, I won't qualify, my family earns far above 60,000, but today we are saying 350,000 is the limit. So if for some reasons a person have already applied, is accepted, and all of a sudden he fits in, the system will pick them up. The third assurance which I want to give is that students who may not have applied at any of our institutions or NSFAS and are looking for space in the post-school system will be assisted through the Central Applications Clearinghouse. You will all remember that following the incidents at the University of Johannesburg a few years ago, when a parent died trying to assist parents, the department came up with the idea of central applications. But now it's live from the 6th of each month of January. It will be live for the next 2 or 3 months to really assist those. I also know personally a few who says, hey, I didn't apply, you know, but now I've passed. There are people who are like that. So through that system, which is managed by the department, we encourage people not to stress their families and their parents, but to lodge their applications. Remember, I've said we have universities and TVET colleges countrywide. Students who are in possession of firm offers from universities or TVET colleges but did not apply, that sounds like a repetition. The phasing in of this policy will ensure the sustainability of government financial resources while simultaneously ensuring that improved access to post-school education and training for students is guaranteed. This approach allows government to gradually phase in fully subsidized free higher education for eligible poor and working class students year on year in a fiscally sustainable manner. In line with government's commitment to opening up access to opportunities for students in the post-school education and training system, the department remains committed to the egalitarian principles of equality, fairness, justice, and diversity. We believe that this will go a long way in the fight against the perennial challenge of skills deficit that has developed the country since the dawn of our democracy. This investment in our youth will result in the production of a youthful workforce armed with relevant skills critical for our endeavor as a country to create inclusive economic growth. It is important that this decision includes universities and TVET college opportunities. The importance of developing TVET skills to power our economy should not be underestimated. We are working very closely with countries which have really invested hugely in TVET colleges and managed to cut down unemployment to below 10%. We will be having a couple of seminars and dialogues with some of those countries already committed to work with us. Students must take into cognizance that universities and TVET colleges registration processes are managed independently from the department, and this is done by individual institutions in accordance with their policies, admission criteria, and enrollment plans. In order to assist learners make informed career and study choices, the department operates the KETA multi-channel platform, which is a career development service. This service provides free access to career information, advice, and guidance through telephone, SMS, social media, face-to-face, and outreaches to schools, among others. For instance, you can call 0860 999 0123 for advice, or send an SMS, or please call this number. Usually the SMS is better, 072 204 5056. These services complement the online platforms, which include the newly revamped National Career Advice Portal and Career Help web and mobile sites. These are mainly self-help platforms that provide information on career pathways, occupations, and relevant education and training opportunities, and facilitate career decision-making. Since the tragic incidents at the University of Johannesburg in 2012, where lives were lost, walk-in applications at institutions have been discouraged. And through the Apply Now campaign, which runs every year from March through to September, in conjunction with the KETA Career Advice and DHET Career Development Services, all prospective students have been encouraged to make informed career choices and apply on time. I'm emphasizing really the messages that the department has been sending throughout the year in both urban and rural areas, which today is common knowledge. But it's always important to emphasize, in case a young person wake up and find herself in a situation where they need to approach the department, those numbers are important for help. The numbers, especially for people in rural areas where accessing the website connectivity might be a challenge, at least most families, we have stats to show that they have more than one cellular phone. It assists prospective students by sharing their national senior certificate results with public and private further and higher education institutions across the country, including TVET colleges, sector education and training authorities, the SETAs, and registered private higher institutions, which of course at the moment are not included within our NSFAS. But the SETAs are very, very important for young people sometimes to build up, to assess their interest in the area and really clear their mind whether they want to be in that space, if they can access the learnerships, which we'll be announcing soon from April onwards. Institutions with open study places, technical training opportunities, or apprenticeship slots then make them available to the most suitable applicants on our data, which we said the department will open up for students who will be applying late. Students who have been declined offers at university should approach this system of the department, apply online, make sure that they indicate their interest, and they will be assisted through a variety of opportunities, as we have said. It is also possible to send an SMS with a name and ID to 49200, or to go to Facebook, where you find this system which we are talking about for the department, www.facebook.com/TVET facebook.com #CACH South Africa. They often call it CACH. It opens on the 5th of January. I had already said on the 6th, 2018, following the release of the 27 national senior certificate results, and closes around on 28 February 2018. We really look forward to the announcement of the national senior certificate results and hope that the information which we have put out there will help whoever find themselves not sure which way are they likely to go after this announcement. I thank you for your attention. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister. We are going to, shall I start with Hlengiwe Mkhize to take the questions first?
Yes, we've got one question so far, Minister.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Linda Ensel from Business Day. Minister, if I'm correct, the first phase of the phase-in is already government policy. It was announced last year, so there's nothing new that you're announcing today. Just reaffirming that the President's announcement will be phased in according to the previous plan. That's my one question. And to State Security Minister, what plans is his department taking to prevent disruption at universities come registration in case there's a massive walk-in process that takes place? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all from Cape Town?
That's all, Minister.
Thank you. Shall we take hands, round of hands here? Pardon me if I can't see properly the names. Introduce yourself as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. I saw 4 hands. Okay. Go ahead.
Greetings, Minister. The name's Angelo Coppola from China Global Television. I've got 3 questions. How many students are going to be included in this tertiary pool now with the new criteria? That's one. What happens to the students who now qualify for 2018, given that most of those tertiary institutions are actually oversubscribed already? And then thirdly, your reaction to the EFF call for students to arrive at the gates tomorrow, and how are you going to treat that? Thank you.
Number 2. Can we have the mic, Ido?
Hi, my name is Ido Lekota. I'm from Inside Education. My first question is that there was a commission, and the commission made recommendations to the sense that South Africa cannot afford free tertiary education. And then out of that, there was this announcement by the President. I just want to understand the essence of that commission and its recommendations vis-a-vis the decision that has been taken. And then the next one, I think it's in line with the last gentleman. The minister says you're going to assist students who now to apply through the central application clearing. I just want to understand that practically what that means, because we have already indicated that universities have taken an X amount of applications and probably accepted those. Now, they are going to be these people. Where would they expected the space to come from?
Number 3.
Morning, Minister. I'm Kuniso from Creative Kuniso. My question is that, Minister, you know your budget. Since you have been in an office, you know your budget. I'm just requesting a factful answer. Do we have budget for free education, or you gonna just do this to protect your seat, or you're gonna do this to protect yourself from pressure from other political parties? Do we have that budget for free education, or you are still going to hunt for the loan?
Number 4.
Good morning, Minister. Arabile Kumete. I think in conjunction with what everybody's speaking about, just with regards to that costing, there's been a massive back and forth between yourself and also the finance minister with regards to how much it's going to cost. Do you have an estimation in that regard? Sorry, the name is Arabile Kumete from Bloomberg, if I didn't say that. And secondly, just regarding that costing as well, where exactly within the fiscus do you deem that money to come from? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take those questions. As I said, we've got the CEO of NSFAS, Mr. Zwane. We've got the acting DG here, together with the minister. I think there's one question for Minister Pongo. Shall we start with you, Mr. Zwane? I think there are some that will need you to come through. Or Minister still.
Okay, that's fine. No, that's fine.
Does it on? Kumla, help with that.
Okay. From an NSFAS standpoint, there was a particular question that I believe was directed to us, but I think the opportunity that we want to take is that we were encouraged by the feedback that NSFAS must continue to administer the funds on behalf of the state via a bursary instead of a loan. I think we also wanted to use this opportunity to assure South Africans that the state has been providing elements of free education since 1991. This is an opportunity to increase the number of people that get the benefit, and also to increase the threshold from 122,000 household income to 350,000. For us, we are thrilled because the 300,000 applications that we've received gives us a sense that South Africans do want to access higher education, and we believe that a bulk of the applicants do meet the criteria that is now set up, and we're really excited. I mean, I'll let you know that we're sort of ready to advise the matriculants of their feedback from us as NSFAS, whether they qualified or not. The other thing is it's important that South Africans understand that this conversation on free education does include us, Department of Higher Education, and the TVETs, as well as the universities themselves. We are part and parcel of this process. We are, as NSFAS, concerned by what has been out there in the media about the application process having been opened. We haven't opened the application process, and as the minister has said, the process is as follows. We will make sure that the 300,000 applications are assessed in line with the new criteria. And we'll alert all those early birds how far the application has gone and if they gain access to higher education. But the big part of it is that we are no longer going to make wholesale awarding of funding to anyone. We will only base that on, do you have an offer from a higher learning institution, particularly when it comes to universities, given that 90% of the online applications we have received are coming from the university sector. For the TVETs, that's going to be slightly different. We know that most of the time TVETs deal with a lot of walk-ins. Those that work in NSFAS will be on site to assist TVETs to deal with those sort of applications. But there's nothing that is going to be opened up from NSFAS for students to apply directly, and the processes are there. And as the minister has said, anyone who feels they qualify for NSFAS, but they had not applied for NSFAS, though they put up an application at the institution, we can guarantee you that we will assess those applications. That is a communication directly from NSFAS and the institution itself. So we'll make sure that those gaps are closed, particularly those that are for new applicants. And I think it's exciting for South Africans to wake up on the 16th and be told that now you worry less about paying for your fees if you're from a poor background and the working class. So basically that means the excitement must be focused on getting the right results to be able to access higher education and relive your dreams in the true sense of the code that was mentioned of Nelson Mandela. So for us as NSFAS, we're really concerned by also the saying that go to any higher learning institution and bulldoze your way in. That's not how we work. The application process must be followed. Academic criteria still applies. universities will not be oversubscribed. Why is that important for us as NSFAS? Is because the money that can be allocated to NSFAS will always be equal to allocation given to the institutions. I think that's what I'd like to just articulate from an NSFAS standpoint.
Thank you very much. Before I forget, my apologies, I didn't acknowledge Dan Kekana, the whip of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training from Parliament. Honorable Member, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Honorable Pongo, there is a question for you. There is a tweet that was asking, why are you here? We are all members of the IMC. Other colleagues were not able to join us. So just to clarify our presence. Over to you, Honorable Pongo.
No, it's not there.
Okay. Thank you very much. About the plan, as the state security, we were working on a plan with all other student formations that are all over the campuses, in line with what the president has said, because we really wish to make what government has pronounced on the free higher education. So the plan that we have, without giving any detail, it's in line with what the minister was reading. So what the minister was reading is a plan that is constructively and composed by all of us in the IMC. So for that why the minister is here, it's an inter-ministerial committee set out by the president. So issues of higher education are issues of state security at the same time. So it should not be a big matter, Minister. And about the budget, I also want to, we just came back from the African National Congress conference, which has very clear resolutions on how we must dispose of this matter. So whatever government must do, must respond to what the ANC conference has resolved on. We, or the president, I think for the first time, Chairperson, we have a commission where the president just gives the whole report of the commission and gave the whole country to respond to the commission's report for the first time. And then the president decided to implement certain decisions arising from the report of the commission. So the response by the president and government on the free education was not on the basis of anything that we read about, but it was on the basis of the report. The president published the entire report, and he applied his mind and implemented certain decisions around the report. And this is what we are committing government to be doing. All the plans are around. We are going to work with student formations that are there on campuses, including those we have commented. We will also work with them because ours is to make sure that the state is protected. Ours is to make sure that government respond to the people of South Africa, and ours to make sure that we implement the policies of the ruling party, the African National Congress. Thank you very much, Minister Kubai. I'm sure you can tell them why I'm here. State security related issues.
No, I mean, I really fully agree with the Minister of State Security. We are all here representing we are all here, I fully agree with the Minister of State Security. This is not really about the Minister of Higher Education. When we started, I did say we're really grateful for government communication, especially the Minister, Kubai Ngubane, for providing leadership in this instance, that let's take it beyond individual ministers and officials, but communicate as government. So I'm happy the Minister of State Security is here. But just to join in, Minister, on that question, you know what we have been saying, our dream is not to have our institutions being dominated by the police. Because if we allow that, or we make it almost a norm that whenever there are issues on our campuses, then the police will come in. We will not be sending a positive message out there about these special places. Places of learning are for a few. They are for special people who bring a particular caliber, the mindset, the mentality. It doesn't mean there will be no conflicts. There will always be conflict whenever people are gathered. But there are modes and means of managing conflicts within institutions. You don't easily wake up and disrupt an academic program, because those are serious programs which determine the throughput, the quality of what you get. And so if you really securitize these institutions, you lose what is the ethos of an academic institution. But of course, we are in a real world. There will be problems. I still believe our management will have sufficient capacity to pick up early warning signs of a brewing conflict and to engage the structures. Universities have got SRC representative, institutional forum, deans, heads of department, Senate, all the important structures, they are there in university. Organized labor is there. We should gradually begin to mature and be able to resolve our problems. With regard to the first question, whether is there anything new, I think there is something significant here which we must note, and people must understand that while in the past we have for too long they had a threshold very low. There were very few people who actually could qualify for NSFAS, from my experience, because many people would have gone beyond 120, maybe at 200 and so on, and slightly above, but they then would not qualify. So I think this deliberate raising it is a significant percentage from a number point of view of those who will now qualify when we push it to the level of 350,000. So that is quite significant. But also, when we say those who are in their second year and later years who had applied and were given loans by NSFAS to enable their progress, if they meet all the requirements, they will be converted. And I know some will say there's no condition there. They will be converted into loans, to bursaries. They will be converted to bursaries. I think that's important. Anyone who has been following universities, you'll be familiar with stories of young people who would say, hey, now I have a problem. I have a loan from NSFAS this year, but the university is saying I'm still owing, which means the previous year you didn't have enough but now they can't register you because you are owning. And I think government is trying to say, we have limited time. We don't want you to stay in the system forever. We'll push you through and make sure that we fast track your progress so that you are out of the system as soon as possible. You are not held back by finances, and sometimes you drop out, you come back again, because that frustrated the system. So I hope in reality, as we evaluate when we meet somewhere, we'll be giving numbers and saying this has really had impact. While the previous year institutions were at this, they've moved, they are at this level. The other question was about the actual numbers, which I hope by next week, when we have the press briefing of the Department of Education and our sector as a whole, will be having realistic numbers. But the technical teams which assisted the President to respond to the recommendations of Judge Hare estimated the numbers of new applicants at 208,000. That was for 2018. And then based on the previous experience, then was saying 40% of those, if you look at this threshold, which is about 80,000, will qualify. Yeah, so we have made an estimate based on the number of people who have applied and the percentage of those who will qualify from a NSFAS point of view. I mean, this is modest because it doesn't take into consideration their realities. As we are sitting here, NSFAS hasn't got the realistic number of those who have got firm offers from universities. We don't know how many have gone through and they qualify who were writing matric this year. So it's a modest, conservative number, accommodating all possibilities of what we didn't anticipate, but it happens all the time. People will, I think it was Ligota, around the Judge Hare Commission.
Yes,
Ido Ligota, yeah. Yeah, I think it's important actually to give a context of the announcement of the President to that high-level commission, which was established as per recommendation of the sector when the President Zuma, was meeting with the sector, trying to understand what is a problem. We have NSFAS. Why are our young people struggling so much, even dropping out, and all the problems around higher education? Then the recommendation from one of the vice chancellors was that maybe let's establish a commission. And the President took that seriously and established a commission. It's named Judge Hare Commission. And of course, it took long to put out the report to the public. I always say to people, it reminds me of, you'll remember Madiba's TRC. Those of you who were already practicing, some might have still been at school. Madiba said, I want a commission, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which must run for 18 months, nothing more. And I think we took 7 years. So with this commission report, our sector is huge. And it has got researchers, it has got experts and all sorts of interest bodies. So they interacted with the commission, they made input and so on. And in my understanding, at a certain point, this commission, like most commissions, as I've made reference to Madiba's, President Madiba's TRC, commissioners will ask for extension. If they feel it's important for the country, it cannot be, information that they are getting cannot be ignored. So it took much longer for the President to get a report than anticipated. And of course, you know, I'm not going to say now, it was, for me, it looked like a PhD thesis, because, you know, that is intimidating. When you read a PhD thesis, you don't complete it, you feel it's too much. It had too much information. The first thing I said when I saw it, I said, oh, here you have to read and read. And it took longer. And to me, but we were all then, the department and all the stakeholders, were really agitating to say it must be released. And the president released it while waiting for technical teams to pull out the recommendations from that thick, bulky document. And I must say, for myself and the department, we still have a lot of work to do in terms of looking at that document and say, long term, what else is there? But the recommendations, what were picked up from there, were really that were within the parameters of what has been approved for the Department of Higher Education and Training. Remember, we already had NSFAS, which is a financial institution framework with clear budget vote activities of what we can do for students. So the recommendations which were taken are already the items that we have put forward are already budgeted for. But the key message is that it was not enough, and it was excluding other people who are slightly above 120,000 and not coping with the university costs. Remember, we haven't touched the question of how to manage the escalating costs on the sides of universities. So we took those recommendations, which we said, we have NSFAS. It's a system of managing the financial system. The first meeting I had with the CEO, I said, have you got capacity to manage the administration of this? And of course, the answer was a proud yes. We have technology, we'll manage. So we will keep on reporting on that. And so that's where then, in terms of the commission, we picked up those recommendations. And also, as I said when I started, we looked at the recommendations which have come every 5 years of the conference that phase in free education. And it was an act of courage in the sense that for the higher education and training, we had not reached a point of what had already been done by basic education. Basic education already had no fee paying schools completely, where you don't have to worry about books. They went an extra mile to feed young people and to do all other things. Introduce ICT labs and all the things that were not even anticipated. So for us, I think as the department, is a major step in the right direction to start off by looking at those who are vulnerable in society, in the sense that they still experience a subtle form of discrimination. Because if you are brought up by a granny or a parent who cannot afford, and you feel discriminated against, you feel I'm a South African, but I'm deprived of a critical resource which can take me from a particular level and put me at a different status in society. So we went through a process where the technical teams of affected departments looked at the numbers and came back ultimately to the ministerial task team and the president and cleared the air that if we keep it modest with the recommendations as it NSFAS, then we are within the framework. But of course, as we have said, now it's a complete support, including a fully subsidized accommodation, transport, and food. Then it means there will be the graph will increase. And all that was looked at. And we get clearance from Treasury that, look, as long as you are within these parameters and not going beyond what our cabinet has already approved, we should be able to manage. And I always say to people, us alone as a department, 2015, 2016, we have managed to find up to 5 billion from some of our resources to support the education of young people in universities and of course TVET colleges. So there was a question really about whether is this genuine or whether we are saving, is a political, what is it? Yeah, whether it was a political stance. And I really think this is one area which we had to complete. Remember where we come from in 1994 and what people like Professor Kada Asmal did. They went to an extent of coming up with measures of these institutions of higher learning, saying our students should access higher education and training. But of course, access has been limited by this resource. So I think this is a step in the right direction, which we must all support in a modest way, as we are all doing. And as a department, our further responsibility is to assist the implementers, our TVET colleges, NSFAS, and our institutions of higher learning, so as to ensure that they have the capacity to screen and do all the things. But I must emphasize that it's really not new for university to assess applications. There's, in a university setting, there's no central application place. Each faculty, the dean of the faculty will say, I'm the dean of the Faculty of Medicine. This is what I want, the numbers, the criteria, and he's the one who will take to the registrar and say, to me, this is it, I've sealed it, they sign it off. Law is the same. So I really want to assure the public that we cannot gamble with our youth's life. Education is critical in taking this country forward. It's not a political ramble. With regard to the leader of the EFF, what he has said, I think if I had my own political party as well, I wouldn't keep quiet on this announcement. I will take a mileage of some kind. But we have sent a clear message to him that it's not meant to disrupt the autonomy of universities from a point of the standards, the criteria, and all the niceties of an institutions. So I hope the message has really will help us to communicate even better post this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take the last round of hands. Start here. I think 1, 2, 3, 4 at the back. 4. Shall we go? Can you get to the mic? Do you mind moving to the mic? Just next to you.
Hello? Okay, cool. It's Kgaupalele Palaizile from Jacaranda FM. My question is for Mr. Zwane. There is a group of students or former students who are saying this because of this announcement, they won't need to pay back their NSFAS loans. Some have jobs, some don't. What is your comment on this?
That's my question.
Okay, number 2.
Good afternoon, it's Michael from ENCA. It can be answered by anybody. It's a question that keeps on springing up. Why is the Minister of Finance, your colleague Malusi Gigaba, not here? If he wasn't part of that IMC, why was he not part of that IMC? Is there anybody who could venture why, arguably the most critical portfolio in this entire policy is not here to be able to answer critical questions related to sustainability. Minister, saying something is fiscally sustainable and repeating it doesn't make it so. South Africans want details. When are they going to get those details? Thank you.
Number 3.
Minister, again, Arabile Kumete, I think just in the first round of questions, I don't think my question was gotten to. And again, I will put it out there. Have you gotten a clear estimation as to how much this will cost and exactly where this money will come from? And obviously then that relates very well to Michael Apple's question, my colleague, about why Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba then has not been or isn't currently part of this entire process. Thank you.
Number 4.
Sipho Mabena for the Times Live. Minister, just to take you back to the question of criteria. The other issue that is raised by the EFF is that those who completed their years ago, 1998, 1997, who qualified for university entry but did not qualify for funding, can they now use this opportunity to acquire their education? Is there an age restriction to this current policy? Thank you.
Okay. Shall we take quickly as well Cape Town so that the questions can be answered?
Yes, we've got one follow-up, Minister.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Minister. Sorry, Linda Insel from Business Day. I'm still confused. You know, you say you've increased the threshold to 350,000. What has it been increased from? What was the previous figure, so we get some idea of the extent of the change? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the issue of Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance was part of the IMC together with the team. Unfortunately, as I said, we received apologies for this presser today. Other ministers couldn't be. It's not only him who's not here as Minister of Finance. Obviously, discussions in government involve all departments. So discussions of the IMC involved Minister of Finance, who was part of it throughout. So they couldn't come here today to be with us on the briefing. Maybe let's start with the Linda's question for NSFAS answer the confusion of the threshold.
All right. Thank you very much. Linda, your question relates to the debt that previous graduates of NSFAS owe to the institution and maybe to the country as a whole. We believe that
I'm sorry, I'm not asking about the debt. I'm asking what the previous family income now
I'll
being
come to your...
Okay, let's give him an opportunity. He's expanding on the issue so that you can...
All right, so we'll take your question with the one on the loan. So talk about what is changing, also talk about the loan. Let me start with the loan one. NSFAS has always operated as a loan and bursary scheme for years. Is sitting with the huge debt, which we were using to be able to fund more students. If you paid your loan, we were able to fund more students. And that was a contract between us and NSFAS and those individuals that were debtors. The pronouncement by the President applies from 2017 and beyond, which comes into effect in 2018. We as NSFAS would love South Africans to pay it forward. That which was given to you has enabled you to pioneer, change your family's course and change your own life. And would love for you to just give it back to the country if you can. And that is why we are putting our efforts forward to recover that money. Now, we are moving away from being a loan provider to a bursary provider. It's a privilege that the South Africans are getting from 2018 and beyond, and that must be celebrated. So we would urge South Africans to pay that money back. There are two reasons why it's important that money to be paid back. Firstly, it's your own conscience that says the country's given to you, why don't you give to somebody else to be able to access the higher education? We also would like to use the same amount to see if we can plow it back and provide access to many others. So South Africans, if you do owe NSFAS, and if there's anyone in this room that still hasn't paid, please consider paying us that money back. It's really important. The question about what has changed, the minister has spoken about that. We did say that the criteria was your household income is supposed to be 122,000. So a collective income in your household was supposed to be 122,000. Now, that was always exclusion in a way that if you were on 180, 200, 250, you still weren't able to take your children through higher education. Now, much more number of people can be able to access higher education because it moves to 350,000. That is the full cost of study that can get given. But also, a number of South Africans were always wary of signing an NSFAS loan because they thought, I will have a debt, how will I pay for that debt? Now, the new 2018 intake won't have any form of debt that relates to NSFAS. It's a full-on bursary that now all you have to do is to just perform. And also, there's bigger opportunities for a number of people in this particular instance. So for us as South Africans, I really, really urge you to take up this opportunity and just access higher education. We've benefited over 3 million people to date, and I think we can benefit even more.
Thank you very much, Minister Mkhize.
Thank you very much. Minister Dai wanted to talk to one question from the previous lot. Quickly, put down.
Thank you very much, Minister. There was a question about the issue of oversubscription at universities and the number of spaces that are available. I think it's really important to recognize that all of our institutions have enrollment plans. The total number of spaces for first-time entries in the system is 208,000 for 2018. And while it appears there's a major oversubscription, because currently we don't have a central application service and many students will apply to more than one institution. In fact, that 208,000 spaces easily covers the numbers that come out of the NCS system each year. In general, our experience is that around about 160,000 students coming out of matric would normally apply for and go to our university system each year, and then the rest of the spaces are taken up by people who had completed their NCS in previous years and now apply to the system. So, and that's why we utilize the central applications clearinghouse process to assist with the redirection of students who don't get into a particular space. And we would really want to encourage all students who either have not managed to get the space that they applied for or who are looking for a space to register on that system when it goes live.
Yeah. I think there are questions around the role of Treasury, the Minister of Finance in particular, has been addressed. Remember the due process you are talking about, it had a ministerial committee at a high level chaired by Minister Hadebe. And Minister of Finance in person was part of that. And there was also a technical team at a DG level, and the DG of Finance was part of that. So it is important really to somehow demystify this issue or perception that there are decisions which somehow undermine Treasury. In this instance, there has been a due process where the Minister of Finance and his technical team was at the center. Some of the meetings were held in the Department of Higher Education, some held in the Ministry of Finance, depending on the discussions over the weekends, after hours. I think this has been a team effort. Actually, just to share with colleagues, it's important to say, after all the work was done, the Minister of Finance is the one who helped us to make a breakthrough by clearly assuring everybody that looking at what the technical team has done, I think you are still within my expectation. Remember, this budgeting process started It's not exactly where funds we identify which were with NSFAS. So I might not give you the exact amount. Again, colleagues, I don't want to be in conflict with the Minister of Finance. He made a plea to the President not to delve into that space. He made a plea to all of us, the committee, to communicate, address issues, and leave the nitty-gritty to him. But the technical teams assured us that this is not going to affect the limits. In other words, it's not going beyond the approved budget that was voted for in Parliament. It's not going to go outside that. It's important to be clear about that we take seriously the ceiling that has been approved. There was also, yeah, of course, you know, somewhere we will need assistance. You know, government in the hospital, they budget for different things, clinics in communities, and so on. But when there's a disaster, a pandemic of some kind, and people, you know, they think we need to do something, government budget in such a way that you are able to meet the needs. So I appreciate the value of a question given our economic downturn, but also I hope realistically now, having explained that there are no new budget votes that we are introducing with this, is something already budgeted for. It will somehow assure South Africans that we are reasonably implementing this without disrespecting the approved fiscus of the country. Yeah, the question of legacy. People have been saying to us, are you promoting reckless behavior on the part of students where they don't have a sense of responsibility? And really the intention is not. For instance, when it comes to the old debt, we will be, as a department, coming up with clear policies of how to track down whoever is owing, and especially people in strategic positions and companies and government and everywhere, working in cooperation with SARS, we should be able to get as much money as possible. With regard to the future, there's an expectation that we come up with recommendations and policies as to what do we do to ensure that we don't take away this commitment from young people to plow back into their country. So we will be going back to cabinet with proposals and recommendations so that the future, the fund is able to sustain itself to a large extent rather than to grow out of proportion. So, yeah, I think basically, Minister, yeah, you know, universities usually, they encourage people to learn for life. The same applies to TVET colleges. If you apply and you want to do something and you qualify for it, they will encourage you to apply, even if you are a little bit older. Not to mention with our youth, I'm talking about old people who want a 60th or 70th with a PhD or a master's degree. Universities will encourage you. So it's a post-school is good because it really look at each and every person who want to learn, acquire skills. It's accommodate all of us. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Fine.
That concludes the questions. Thank you very much, colleagues, for attending. Really appreciate.
It's fine.
In terms of that.
Minister, Minister, do you mind if I just bother you? I'm so sorry to do this, Minister. I honestly have a burning issue in this regard, and I know, colleagues, I'm taking everyone's time, but really, with regards to the funding issue, now a colleague of mine has just told me as well that the finance minister says they are still seeking a way of finding the funds to fund this policy. Is the minister not fearful then and worried, however, that you've been thrown a hospital pass in this regard and you just have to make it work? That's my one question. The other thing... Okay. All right.
Clarify that the Minister of Finance has been part of the IMC. Has been part of the IMC. The discussion happened extensively. The last meeting of the IMC happened in December, where all parties were there, discussed what needed to be done. In terms of what Minister Mkhize is trying to clarify is that what is being proposed here is within the policy framework. There is nothing that is being done outside the budget process. You need to understand how budget process works. It's that the Minister of Finance will have to say, this are the priorities of the year, this is what is going to be done. In February, when he tables his budget, all those will be explained. What also we are saying as government is that we've been doing part of the work already through NSFAS. We're not doing anything outside what has been done. What is being introduced here, it's what is going to be with the threshold that the CEO of NSFAS has explained. Opening up that threshold to 350 income, and that is within the process of NSFAS. Once NSFAS has done all that and allocation into universities, remember one of the things that has to be done is that universities must come back and say, this is how many students we've taken that have applied, qualified, given offers, and out of those, all the students, this is how many are going to fall into NSFAS. So a lot of things that we are doing are sort of predictions. Once we have the actual figures from the universities based on admissions, based on qualifying criteria in terms of the household income, then you have your final figures of who in all those, because first before a student can say, I am deserving of a free education, need to also qualify, because you need to be able to say, I qualify to be able to do this qualification. So those things, that's why Minister is saying later on, other information will come through. As we go on, this is not the last. This is first to explain the process, to say there's work that is being done. This is where we are, finance point of view, admission point of view, and NSFAS point of view, because there was a lot of confusion. And this is meant to clear those confusion. Once other details are available and needs to be communicated to the public, that will be done appropriately. I hope this clarifies the matter. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Long live the Chair.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well done, Minister.
I'm leaving. Thank you.
We need.
Minister, do you have 10 seconds for me? I have a question for you.
We need him to protect us.